Welcome back to Gaming Top Down. Today I'm continuing my video series going over every game in my collection, breaking them down by different categories and the letter that they start with. The categories are upcoming games that should be here soon, games I haven't been able to play yet, games I'm thinking about purging from my collection, and my favorite games that start with that letter. Today we're combining the letters Q and R. Without any more ado, I think if you've watched to this point, you know how it goes, so let's jump right in. Okay, I have one upcoming game that starts with the letter R, and this is Rise of the Wastelands. This is a 4X game, and it will be my first 4X game in my collection, other than Arcs, but that's only kind of slightly in that genre, has a few other genres mixed in. So this is more traditional 4X. You're exploring out over this wasteland, kind of growing your influence. You might be fighting a bit with the other players. I am excited to try kind of a more traditional 4X experience, and the reason I gave this one a chance is kind of twofold. It's not super long, which is something I've been a little afraid of. Think Twilight Imperium and some other games like that can last 4 to 6 hours, which is difficult to find someone that can be around all day for. And also, when I was looking through the Kickstarter page, I was really impressed that they had two different versions. They have the standard version that has wooden pieces, and then the deluxe version with plastic miniatures. And I really didn't feel that there was much lost in the wooden pieces because they went through so much care to make custom wooden pieces. So even the base pieces, cover your board the same way you do your player board, and kind of managing all your pieces there doesn't lose anything either with having the wooden pieces. And so it was a pretty good price as well. So yeah, lots of praise for a game I haven't played yet, but that is Rise of Wastelands, an upcoming game that should be here, I think, early next year, so not for a little bit, but excited to get that 4X game to the table when it does show up. Okay, for games I haven't been able to play yet, I have quite a few in this video, and we're going to start with my only game that starts with the letter Q, one that I got very recently. This is Quinto. This is a simple roll and write game from Pandasaurus, but I've heard really good things about this one and how quick it is to play, but that there are good decisions in it as well. I don't really know much about it. I haven't read the rule book or anything, but just looking at this player sheet here, it looks very simple. Probably ascending numbers have to go in these rows based on the color of the die that was rolled in some way to keep track of points. Yeah, excited to try it out. Just haven't had the right occasion yet. Plays 2 to 6, which is a good range as well. Next up is a very small game from Button Shy Games. This is River Wild, and I also have the Wildscapes expansion. This is one that I do think I will like, since I have quite a few other Button Shy games that I have enjoyed that are pretty similar, like Sprawlopolis that I talked about a few videos ago, and I talked about Naturopolis and Unsurmountable. This is one where you're laying tiles down, kind of making this river in kind of a pyramid shape, and you're trying to make a river that would give you the most points, and the different icons on the card will fulfill different point scoring objectives. I really like the art style in this game. I hope it has enough scoring flexibility and variety as Sprawlopolis does, where the backside of every card in Sprawlopolis has a different scoring objective, and you use 3 of the 18. This one looks like it's scored in maybe a more consistent manner, but hopefully the little mini expansion here will add a little variability as well. So excited to try River Wild from Stephen Aramini and Button Shy Games. Just haven't been able to yet. Next up is another small game and another roll and write. This is from Horrible Guild, who I really enjoy most of their games, from 2 designers that I think might be in-house designers from Horrible Guild that make a lot of their games. This is Railroad Inc. I have one of the later versions with challenge in the title for some reason. I think it has a couple extra modes you can play as. This is a roll and write game where you were trying to build your own railroad track. And you do that by rolling dice, and then everyone has to use those dice on their board. And the dice aren't standard D6s. They have different shapes on them that show kind of the curves and the railroad tracks that you can build during that turn. There's also a canyon and desert expansion with orange and yellow dice. So that must be the unique part in this yellow edition compared to the green edition. I think this has been a pretty popular line for them. So I am excited to try it. I am a fan of roll and write games. Some of my very favorite games like Welcome to the Moon fall in this genre, but if they're not something as smart as Welcome to the Moon, I want them to be short. And I think this falls more in that short category as opposed to kind of that longer, more in-depth Welcome to the Moon category. That is Railroad Inc., specifically the Shining Yellow Challenge Edition. Next up is Raptor. This is a 2-player only game, and I think that I will really like it because it is designed by Bruno Cathala and Bruno Feduti, and they designed another game that uses almost the exact same system called Mission Red Planet that I talked about in my video going over games that start with the letter M that I really love. And it's basically the same system, just pared down to being 2 players only. And instead of sending astronauts to the moon, one player controls this velociraptor trying to save her babies, and the other player controls these scientists that I think they're just trying to capture the babies to use them for science. Has some cool artwork, and I really like that system where you both play a card, you don't know what card they're going to play, and I think the number is like the initiative or who will go first, and then it also has a bunch of some actions that that card allows you to do. So whichever cards give you more initiative generally aren't as powerful, but being able to go first is usually a pretty big advantage. So I like that system from Mission Red Planet. Excited to try this one again, just haven't been able to quite yet. Next up is a game I just got from a friend who was purging some games from his collection. This is Roll for the Galaxy, kind of a dice version of Race for the Galaxy, which I believe is a card game. I haven't played Race for the Galaxy, even though it's incredibly kind of well-known and famous in the hobby board game space. This is a dice version where you'll be rolling these, I think, 7 different special kinds of dice with unique symbols on them. And it looks like kind of behind your player shield in order to do different actions like produce goods, get money, buy new ships. And it looks like you'll take them from and to your player board as well. I haven't read this rulebook, so I don't know much about the game, to be frank, but I do like a good sci-fi theme. This line of games, Race and Roll for the Galaxy, I think are very beloved, so excited to try it. Just haven't been able to quite yet. That is Roll for the Galaxy. Okay, next up is Railroad Revolution. This is one I just got in a trade pretty recently, and I'm excited to try it as well. Kind of has a more Euro-looking theme, you know, Ticket to Ride kind of vibes, where I think you are building these train routes, but I believe you're trying to push west, starting at the east coast here. And you have a bunch of workers and your own player board. You're trying to remove things from your player board, like I don't remember all of the jargon, but the routes and probably these like train stations. And you're getting new train tokens and specialties on your workers. There's a bit of a player board there. So this is more of a medium game than, you know, a lighter game like Ticket to Ride. A little bit more going on, but excited to try it. I hope that it can be kind of a more exciting and in-depth version of something like Ticket to Ride for me, which I do enjoy as well, but I like games a little bit more in-depth than that. So that is Railroad Revolution. And rounding out this category of games I haven't been able to play yet is Rajas of the Ganges, which I believe is a dice drafting game, very famous one, designed by the brands, Inca and Marcus. And I think it came out quite a few years ago and kind of had the main system that everyone was impressed by is the scoring and end of the game system. You have two different markers that go around this track in opposite directions. And when they cross at some point on that track is when the game ends. And you're building out your own little player board of your domain or something here. Again, haven't read this rule book yet. You're rolling a bunch of different dice that you're going to have here that you can use to put out workers, I believe, on different spots throughout the Ganges here. Kind of a classic. It gets a lot of love online, so I am excited to play this one. I have a bit of high standards for dice drafting games, but just kind of knowing the reputation that this one has, I imagine that it will be pretty solid. That is Rajas of the Ganges. All right, I have 3 games that I'm thinking of purging that all start with the letter R, and I think a couple of these might be halfway controversial. First up is Ready, Set, Bet, which is a fun time, but I kind of view it more as like a group activity, really, than like a board game. I mean, there's rounds, and there's definitely a bit more going on than some other party games that just have you talking, but it's basically a real-time horse race where either using an app on an iPad or a phone, or by having one player simulate that by rolling these dice to move horses on this central board, everyone else will be betting on horses to either win or place or show at the race, kind of in a mad dash. And that chaos, I think, is the part that I don't love in the game. It, again, it's kind of fun as like a silly activity where everyone is just kind of going crazy, throwing bets on random things quickly when the race starts. But I don't, I don't feel like there's a ton of strategic depth here. In fact, in the few games I have played, whoever just threw their bets out first just kind of seemed to pull ahead because their bets were more valuable. So I don't know if this one's got a lot more stay in my collection. I kind of prefer Longshot the Dice game that has a little bit more thought and, obviously isn't real time. You've got time to think between the different die rolls, where this one is very much go, 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 go. But if that is your style, I think you'll really like it. It's been a very popular game for AEG, I believe. So that is Ready, Set, Bet. Next up is a little 2-player game that I think is a fun time. I just have a lot of small box 2-player games, so I'm picky with them. And this is Royal Visit from Reiner Knizia. I really like everything about this game visually. The art is really cool. The board is this nice long fabric board, and these like pieces are very unique and big meeples. But I don't know on gameplay level, like if it has the staying power I want. You play cards to move the king and his guards, the jester, and the wizard back and forth along this board. You're trying to pull the king to your, I think it's called duchy, your court basically, and your opponent is trying to pull them the other direction. So it's a tug of war game. And if you're able to get the king to yours, you immediately win. Or if you go through the deck, I think twice, when the game ends, then whichever side of the board the king is on, that person wins. And so the cards you play can either move the king and his guards. The king can never be outside the center of his guards, so he's kind of limited by that, so you need to move the guards first. And then the jester and the wizard have special actions that might let you swap the positions of a few of the pieces. So yeah, there's a bit going on. The card play is pretty fun, but it can be a little swingy and wild with the jester and the wizard for sure. They are what throw the fun in the game, but I haven't yet found like the really exciting strategies with it, as opposed to, hey, I have the right cards to do something crazy unexpected that my opponent didn't think of. So maybe just with some more plays, it will get kind of ingrained in my brain and become something I'm excited about as opposed to confused about. But that is Royal Visit, a 2-player game that is fun and pretty, and you can get for a pretty good deal usually on Amazon, but I'm not sure if I will be keeping it long term. And last up in my Purge category is a roll and write game that I think is very pretty. I like what it's doing, but I think it's a little too long for what it is. And this is Rolling Realms from Stonemaier Games. It's a really fun idea. Basically, it takes kind of the idea or the concept from a bunch of other games. In this like original version, it's mainly Stonemaier's other games. So Wingspan and Tapestry, for example, both have cards in here, and Red Rising and Scythe. And you'll shuffle them up, give a few to each player, and then you're trying to complete them in the rounds by rolling these dice. Very standard roll and write fare there. The dice are rolled, and then everyone fills out stuff on their board, or on their dry erase cards, excuse me, with the goal of getting points and crossing off this. Lets me do an extra action, which lets me cross off this, and I can spend a couple of resources, which are, I think, pumpkins, hearts, and coins, to do this, which lets me do this. So there is some of that fun cascading turns ideas here, but I didn't love it. I didn't find it like especially exciting or super engaging. I think the novelty here of the cards that have the mini games based on other games is the unique selling factor. They just came out with a new version, I think, with a bunch of new games that aren't even necessarily Stonemeier's games that they are riffing on. So I think like A Feast for Odin, for example, is in that, and they have little expansion packs you can get that just add new cards. Very cool idea, but I just don't think the game is thrilling to me, and there's so many roll and writes that I am pretty picky with them. So that is Rolling Realms, rounding out my Purge category. All right, and then I have a few favorites that start with the letter R. First up, we'll continue on the Stonemaier train here. This is one that I feel like does not get very much love. This is Red Rising. I think that there were just weird expectations with this game. It comes in a big box. I really wish they could have cut the box size, to 3/4 or half of what it is. And I think that would have helped it with the expectation problem. Because at its core, this is a pretty simple card game based on this book series, Red Rising, which is a good book series. Really recommend it. About these 12 different kind of classes of people that are all based on colors in the book series. And in the game, you are trying to get a hand of cards that synergizes well to get the most points at the end of the game. Most of your points are going to come from that hand of cards. Basically, the 5, 6, 7, 8 maybe cards that you're holding in your hand at the end of the game, you want them to score a bunch of points. And the different classes don't like each other. So if you really focus on, I don't have a good example, but the pink cards might not like the black cards. And so it might say like 15 bonus points if no black cards are in your hand at the end of the game. And so you kind of pick a direction and then go hard for it trying to get the cards. And the turn-by-turn gameplay is pretty fun. You're discarding a card out basically and getting a new card into your hand. You have a little variation in that, and there's also like a helium resource, and you can move up on a few tracks. But that is the main goal, is that hand management aspect. If you like the book series, I think it's really fun to see the really good artwork of the characters. And I think the game is really fun. It's a simple card game. Once you've played it a couple times, you can really zip through it. It has a fun solo mode that I've played quite a few times as well. So yeah, I think Red Rising doesn't get enough love. Again, you can get it for super cheap nowadays at either, I think I got it at Target or Amazon or your friendly local game shop. Red Rising, I think, is a winner, even though I know opinions vary on this game and every game, to be honest. So Red Rising is one of my favorites. Next up is one of my very favorite two-player games. This is Radlands. There's not much on this box, but maybe I'll open it up really quick and see if I can show you the box inside the box. And in this game, you and your opponent both have 3 camps, and you're playing these cards out in front of your camps to protect them, all with the goal of destroying your opponent's camps before they destroy yours. And I really like kind of the all-inclusive nature of Radlands. This isn't a game where you need to buy a bunch of expansion packs. This isn't a living card game. It's all inclusive in this little box. This is all I had at the beginning. Got it for like $18. Such a good deal and an awesome, complete game in that box. They have now announced one small expansion that comes out later this year that just has more camp cards. And they've said that's the last expansion they're ever going to do. It's just some more cards. They had the rule that they wanted it to fit in the base box as well. So I just really appreciate that design philosophy. And the gameplay is really fun. There are these event cards that you can play that will go in either event slot 3, 2, or 1. And then at the end of each turn, they slide forward, kind of symbolizing the passing of time before that event is triggered. That event might be like to attack one of your opponent's camps or get some extra water, which is your resource for playing cards in this game. Very, very fun 2-player card game. If you like games with a little bit of, well, I mean, this one is all that, but combat with the other player, things like dice thrown. I think this card system is really elegant, where even the top of the deck is kind of a punk, is what they call it, or a unit with only 1 hit point. So I think the game is very, very great. Love it. That's why I got this extra box with the 2 play mats to make playing it and teaching it just a little bit easier. But even just with that center box that I just showed, that's all I had for the first year and a half of having this game. Really love Radlands. So check that one out. Okay, 2 more. Next up is one of my favorite heavier games lately. I've only played it a few times so far, but I've really loved it. This is Revive from Aporta Games. Has some very pretty artwork, but really, there's not a ton of theme. You are expanding out to these different regions, trying to rebuild society, I guess. But the main part of this game is you have your own player board, your own faction board, and 2 different hands of cards. And on each hand, each round, excuse me, one of your hands of cards will be in hibernation over here, and your other hand will be the hand that you are playing with for your actions. And you'll tuck those cards either at the top of your board, so only the top showing, and take that action, or the bottom of your board to do the bottom action. So your board is kind of limiting because generally only 1 card can be in a slot. And then you're trying to make those 2 hands of cards as good as possible. There are some ways to get a card from one hand to the other, but it's a little bit tricky. But that card play, I think, is the best part of this game. You're also, like I said, kind of expanding out to complete some objectives. If you can get out to these corners of the map, you can get some endgame scoring bonuses. Each faction has their own asymmetric objectives with an easier side and then a more complicated side on the back. And they just had an expansion come out, I think, in the last 6 months. So there's a lot of game in this box. And I think it's a very, very solid Euro game. It's medium to medium heavy. It takes a couple hours to play. But Revive is really, really excellent. I have really enjoyed every play that I've had of this game. So that is Revive. Okay, and last up is one that's a little hard to show on camera, but this is Root. I really love Root. I have every expansion for the game except for the Hirelings. I have yet to decide if I want to spring for those yet, but every major expansion, the Marauders, Riverfolk, and the Underground expansion, I think, were the 3 big ones. This is a game with really awesome art that I think Leader Games has Kyle Farron do all of their artwork, and it looks happy and cheery. And but at its core, all of these factions of animals are fighting over control and rule over the forest. And yeah, it's a very, very fun but a high conflict game. It's also long and pretty complex. And I think its biggest downfall is it is hard to teach because each of the factions plays so differently. Each faction has their own faction board that kind of lays out, this is what you do during the 3 phases of the day, birdsong and midday and evening, and what their goals are, and different complexity and reach values. There's a lot going on in this game, and I think if you wanted like kind of a more simpler version of like a really heavy war game, like Root is awesome for that. And you can really dive deep into different scenarios and faction combinations, and there's so much kind of available for Root that it could almost be like a forever game for you, that you play it 100, 200, 300 times and still feel like you're getting new experiences out of it. I think it's really awesome. I have not played it anywhere near that just because of those things I mentioned. It's hard to get, it's hard to teach and hard to get people that want to play a game this heavy and sometimes long. But Root is really, really amazing. It's what cemented my love for leader games, and yeah, what has me really excited for Arcs, which I have played a couple times yet, but my copy hasn't shown up yet. So anyways, Root is one of my very favorite games, especially the digital implementation is excellent and really helps with teaching the game. So I need to find like a Root specific group that I can just play with, because people that love it, but it is sometimes hard to get new people in to love it. Well, that is going to round out my favorite games that start with the letter R. Have you played any of these? And which is your favorite game that starts with the letter R? Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to check out the rest of the content we have on the channel, our weekly podcast where we talk about the board games and video games that we've been playing. I do that together with my brother. And our monthly giveaway. We're giving away a bundle of board games this month, or a gift card to Steam, PlayStation Network, or wherever you would like. So make sure to check those things out too at the links in the description, and I will see you on the next one, which will be a very long video where we go over the games I have that start with the letter S. Until then, see you later.